Welcome to the Buddhistisches Berlin podcast. Join us for live recordings from classes, insightful talks, and guided meditations.
And especially warm welcome if it's your first time here. Hope you had a good meditation in the basement or next door. And Lala Taratna was talking about a festival day that we have next Sunday called Sangha Day. And really I just want to talk today about this whole business of Sangha. Sangha can be translated as spiritual community, and it's something central in Buddhism. It's a really central, it's one of what we call the three jewels in Buddhism. So you have the Buddha is one jewel, the Dharma, his teaching, is another jewel, and Sangha is the third jewel. And it's something that all Buddhists hold very dear, and it's a central part of their life. And I don't know about you, but for me, the Buddha and his teaching was quite clear and obvious to me when I first came along, at least. But the Sangha jewel was a bit less obvious and a bit less interesting to me somehow. I thought, why do we need a community? Why do we need these kind of things? And it's also something that can be quite easily misunderstood, I think. So in a way, for me, the reason I got interested, or why I wanted to talk about the Sangha jewel is, even though I've been practicing Buddhism for quite a long time now, it's still not something, I'm becoming more clear about it in kind of recent months even and years. It's something that takes a bit of time to kind of get your head around or feel into somehow. And I think with all the kind of chaos going on in the world at the moment and all the kind of upset and stress and problems we've got, I think in a way the Buddhism's answer is always the same, It's always the same solution to a changing set of problems. It's not like back in the Buddha's day and afterwards they had a clean run with like nice, cozy times that everybody just meditated and got along. It was pretty rough, to put it mildly, during the Buddha's day and has been afterwards, So whether you're talking about India or the kind of feudal wars in Japan, there's always something going on which is horrific and very difficult to live with. And we have that in abundance at the moment, but the Buddha's answer is always the same, so hopefully there'll be some kind of point of interest or help with what I'm about to say. Not that you can fix these things, but it's a perspective, it's the Buddha's perspective in a very practical, lived out way. So just before I begin, this word Sangha is it exists on two levels, put it that way. So when Buddhists talk about the Sangha, the spiritual community, being one of those central three things, what we're talking about is what's called, I don't want to jargonize it too much, but I have no choice, the Arya Sangha, the noble Sangha, which is basically the Buddha's immediate disciples who were also enlightened. So the Buddha attained enlightenment first, then he communicated, and through that process other people woke up and liberated themselves. So that's what we're talking about, So that's the Sangha, the Arya Sangha, that Buddhists venerate and are inspired by, and it's a central part of their life. The other Sangha is this, So it's like the community, a community is a Sangha, a spiritual community, or an aspiring spiritual community is a Sangha as well. So hopefully that distinction will become a bit more clear as we go along of those two things, So just to be clear, when Buddhists are talking about the Sangha being one of the three jewels, they're not talking about this, that would be a cult, very quickly. If we all kind of, this is it, then we have a problem. So that's not what we're talking about. This is a different kind of Sangha, Okay, we'll get there. So last week we were looking at one of the Buddha's immediate disciples called Angulimala, who was a serial killer, who then attained enlightenment and then became the patron saint of women in childbirth. So that was last week. And we used our kind of imaginal faculties to travel back in time. And we're going to do that again. So cast your mind back 2,500 years to northern India, some bustling metropolises, some warring parties, as Roy pointed out last week. Yeah, it's a bit of chaos in there. Dark forests around, full of tigers, elephants, actual forest. Yeah, and within this there was a clan called the Shakyams. Yeah, and there was a boy born called Siddhartha Gautama. Yeah, in that clan, and he was. Well, I would say he had a healthy childhood, by all accounts. Yeah, he had a healthy upbringing, good family, and he was being raised to take over the kingdom, essentially, or the republic. It seems to be a bit confused whether he was a prince or the son of a chieftain, and it was more of a republic, yeah, with people with shorter terms ruling that area. Anyway. So he grew up in that environment. He was being raised to rule. He was taught how to, taught the skills of war. Yeah, warfare is very important in those days, especially. Also taught how to rule. Yeah, and yeah, there was a lot of different factions and things going on. So he was being brought up in that expectation, with that expectation. And the legend goes that his father. There was an omen when Siddhartha was born, and the seer came to his father and said, Siddhartha will either be a great spiritual leader or he'll be an incredible ruler, like king leader. And his father clearly knew which one he wanted. He wanted the Siddhartha to be a great ruler, yeah, and wasn't interested in all the spiritual nonsense, so he kept him. And the legend goes that he protected him from seeing things, yeah, he protected him from just seeing the bad side of life, so he wouldn't be discontent. So he'd just carry on with his ambitions and become more and more ready to rule and more interested in worldly life, you might say, yeah? But it didn't happen like that. So classically, Siddhartha, you can imagine this young man, probably quite aware, yeah, maybe empathic, and looking around, and he saw that things were not as great, actually. Yeah, there's sickness. Yeah, I think these things, I'm not going to go into the whole way it's brought out in the myth, but he basically saw things. He saw that people get sick. Yeah, young people, babies, old people, they all get sick. Yeah, he saw they all die. Yeah, and this is really starting to impact him. Yeah, he's even seeing that our so-called pleasures can sometimes turn into pain. You know. Life can be painful. It often is. That's a fact. So these things impacted him on a deep level, yeah, a really deep level. I think we tend to have a culture at the moment to kind of, we have many good things in our culture, but one of the things we're trying to do is to alleviate ourselves from feeling any sort of pain. We kind of buffer ourselves with our little devices, all our ideas, our endless. We're trying to kind of just keep all of this slightly outside of our experience, yeah. This is why I spend hours watching YouTube, things like this. It's terrible, but there's a kind of buffering going on. I don't really want to sit with myself sometimes, and we've got a whole culture dedicated, seemingly, to buffering ourselves. But Siddhartha didn't do that, yeah. So he really took that in. And one day he saw someone who seemed to be doing something completely different from everybody else. Yeah, they were doing their own thing. Yeah, they weren't hanging. They were just by themselves, probably under a tree, just sitting there, either naked, in rags, with a begging bowl, with a certain atmosphere around them. And this really struck him. He thought, this person is kind of here, but he's not here in the same way, not tangled up, not busy rushing around. And this really inspired him. Yeah. So to cut a long story short, the Buddha left. He left his tribe. He left his family. He went. Yeah. And he went into the forests, left all his robes and everything behind, cut his hair off, and went on a search. Yeah, he went on a search for an answer to these facts of life that accumulated into suffering. So he was on a search to alleviate himself and perhaps other people, I don't know, but himself at least, from suffering. And he went into the forest, yeah? And he found a couple of teachers, which sometimes get overlooked, but they're obviously really important. One chap called Udaka Ramaputra, and another one called Alara Kalama. Anyway, and he learnt what they had to teach him, yeah, and you could say mastered what they had to teach him, and really got into the depths of meditation. Probably the kind of meditation we can only dream about, but still, he really mastered meditation, yeah. But he was still not free. He was quite high. He felt good. Maybe he felt quite buffered, from the world, but he wasn't free. So he was part of another community now, yeah. And they offered him to take over the community, and so he could lead the community, and that could have been a great life, yeah. But he left. He was like, no, this isn't something. I'm still not free. It's not. I'm just. He knew it. He knew he wasn't free. He knew that it was conditional. His kind of higher states were conditional. So he tried something else after that. He tried to torture himself, yeah, ascetic practices. You see people doing this still, holding one hand in the air for 20 years, or I don't know, all this kind of stuff. And he gained a huge reputation, yeah, doing this. He was literally skin and bones. Apparently he could feel his spine through his stomach, and all his hair was falling out, and loads of people were really impressed. They were like, wow, this dude's serious. And so he had some kind of groupies. They were not different groupies. They were kind of like waiting to get some of his kind of golden rays of enlightenment that were about to come. And he staggered to this apparently this tiny stream to wash himself, and almost drowned. His head was obviously too heavy, so he's in the water. And at that moment, he probably he did think, this isn't working either. So he kind of did something disgraceful to other people, which was eat some tiny amount of rice, and they were like, this is a complete disgrace, yeah? And they left him. They were like, you're a flop, yeah, you flopped out. So he was by himself again, yeah? Another time he's by himself. This is like the third time. And because he just knew that he was going nowhere. He was going to die a pointless death, and he was no more free than he was before. The idea in those circles is to conquer your body, yeah? So we all have these things, these kind of massy, fleshy, bony, lumpy things, and they terrorize us, don't they? They want things, we're kind of at the mercy of our bodies a lot of the time. And the idea was to separate your quote-unquote soul from your body in a way, to alleviate yourself in that way. But it didn't seem to work. So the Buddha went, or should I say Siddhartha went, and I'm not going to go into the whole story of how he attained enlightenment, but essentially he made a decision. He sat down and made a decision that, I don't know, he was onto something, yeah? He was onto something, and that unfolded, and he attained liberation. He was free, yeah? This is like, basically, this whole process of how this happened is another lifetime's worth of studying Buddhism, but essentially it's seeing into the true nature of things, yeah? The fact that, I hate doing this because I hate talking about it's so cheap. It's like you do it as 10 seconds. Yeah, so everything's conditioned. Things are not really things. There's all conditions. They write to things. Then the conditions go away, and then there's not a thing. We're like this. Our identities are like this. And then you get into it, and then it's freedom. There's a slipstream of consciousness. It's like, what's the point? It's like you could just say this stuff for hours, and it's like, why? But just know that the Buddha then anyway, we'll get to that, but the Buddha attained enlightenment through this deep awareness, yeah, deep awareness, which is where meditation comes in, ethical purification, calming the mind, like a profound level of meditation where you're exploring the depths of your consciousness, and then you're working with these concepts or reflections on the nature of impermanence, insubstantiality. They're not just ideas, yeah, they're lived experiences that change you on a mind-body level, not just a nice thought, not just a philosophy, yeah? There we go, good. Good God. Anyway, so the Buddha attained enlightenment, and what's interesting is he could have just gone off into a cave somewhere. He was content, he was free. Don't we all want that? I want that. So you're just free. No more suffering, no more nonsense, no more power games, mind games. Your ego's gone, bliss. you're done, yeah? And the Buddha knew it. And apparently that's what makes a Buddha. A Buddha actually knows that a Buddha's a Buddha. Yeah, it's not just a big experience, there's a clarity there. Oh, I've done it, yeah, free. But instead, he chose to communicate, yeah? It could have been very easy. He did doubt himself at one point, so the story goes. I think it's done more for dramatic effect than in real reality, but he thought, is anyone going to get this? Probably not. You know, it's too subtle, it's hard work, yeah, so... but he did. He went out. He thought of his first two teachers, but he knew that they were already dead. Yeah, so he couldn't teach them because they would be receptive. And then he thought of his friends. Yeah, his 5 ascetic friends. One of them called Kundanya, and he thought, yeah, I'll go to them. They were serious. They may have been on the wrong track, like I was on the wrong track, but they were seekers. They were like really not content just to kind of bumble along in this life. They were really looking for something and looking to liberate themselves. So I'll go and find them. So that's what he did. He got off and began walking towards the deer park where his 5 old friends were who left him. And it's quite interesting. He bumps into a couple of people on his way, yeah, or a few. One of them was quite interesting. So you've got to remember the scene at that time. What people were interested in, as Roy pointed out, apart from war, which people were interested in, was also what you call spiritual issues, yeah? And it seemed to be this era around the whole planet. There was a kind of spiritual emergence, yeah? Like 2,500 years ago. And in India, it was particularly strong, yeah? So you had lots of people that were very, very interested in this, across the whole culture. It wasn't just a minority sport like it is now, yeah? It was a whole kind of interest. So people interest. So he bumps into someone called Upaka, who was a naked ascetic, yeah? And he sees the Buddha on the road, and when he sees him, he says, "Your countenance, friend, is serene. Your complexion is pure and bright. In whose name, friend, have you retired from the world? Who is your teacher? Whose doctrine do you profess?" That's quite interesting in that already, yeah? Like, there's a definite culture of courtesy, yeah? He calls him friend twice, which is very nice. He asks him who his teacher is, asks him, he looks at the Buddha now and thinks, he looks good, yeah? He's sort of shining. There's something coming off him, and he wants to know what's going on, yeah? So the Buddha says back to him, "I have overcome all foes. I am all wise. I am free from stains in every way. I have left everything. I have obtained emancipation by the destruction of craving. Having myself gained knowledge, whom should I call my master? I have no teacher. No one is equal to me. In the world, no being is like me. I am the Holy One in this world. I am the highest teacher. I alone am the absolute Sambuddha. I have gained coolness by the extinction of all passion and have attained nirvana. To found the kingdom of truth, I go to the city of Benares. I will beat the drum of the deathless in the darkness of this world." Yeah, he's no false modesty here. He's definitely just saying it how it is. Yeah, I'm fairly sure he didn't say it like that. I mean, maybe anyway, it's unlikely he said it like that. That would be interesting. So, not sure how he said it, but you get the message. He basically says to him, "I'm something else." Yeah. And then Upaka replied, "You profess then, friend, to be the absolute jinnah." Yeah. So jinnah means conqueror. It's a fantastic word. Yeah. So the Buddha is a jinnah. He's conquered greed, hatred, and delusion conclusively in himself. Yeah. That's the whole claim of Buddhism, that this is possible. Yeah. So the Buddha, he says, "You profess then, friend, to be the absolute jinnah." Yeah. And the Buddha says, "Like me are all jinnahs who have reached extinction of the ashivas, the poisons. I have overcome all states of woe. Therefore, Upaka, I am the jinnah." Boom. Yeah, good. And then Upaka replies and says, "It may be so, friend," shook his head, took another road, and went away. That's crazy. I just find that interesting. It's like almost the Buddha's first interaction. He's not coming blazing out of the sky and everyone's falling to their knees. And his first interaction is someone like, "Yeah, whatever, great," and just walks off. I think it's really important to have a tradition founded where that is your first. It's important for us. It tells us something, doesn't it? Like, we think we probably know what a Buddha is. We probably don't, is the fact. Yeah. So that's very interesting. I mean, I've said it before, but it's a bit like the whole story of the Beatles, isn't it? You know, they went to the first record label. Whoever it was like, nah, I don't think this is going to sell. And then he's there afterwards, like probably having the worst life ever, watching them become like the biggest band in history. Probably not the same, but anyway, it's a similar thing. So then the Buddha goes, he keeps walking, gets to where his friends are, yeah, to the deer park, and the gatekeeper, the groundskeeper turns up and sees this kind of tramp and says, yeah, there's some real holy men in here, can you please not come in? And then his friends have to come up and say, actually, no, he is like, he's the Buddha. They don't know he's the Buddha, but they kind of say to him. So that's another interesting incident, isn't it? You've got this gatekeeper that just sees this person that we would probably run from, yeah? You have to remember what the Buddha probably didn't look like this, yeah? It was like, he'd been in the forest and jungles. He probably had dreadlocks, huge beard, very skinny, in rags, bits of rags taken from dead bodies in cemeteries that they used to stitch together as robes, yeah? So complete renunciant, a certain intensity, probably something quite magnetic, I would imagine, some kind of power to his presence and presence of awareness. But certainly not somebody we would deem to be polite society, put it that way, yeah? Yeah. Anyway, so he gets to his old friends, and in the beginning they don't want to bow to him. They think, here's this loser, you know, he kind of went off, but they can't help themselves. Yeah, they immediately, there's a kind of response to the Buddha now, yeah, where they immediately stand up, they're respectful, and all the mind games, all the kind of ego social games, they just evaporate. They're like, okay, this is something else then. He's obviously done whatever he was set out to do. And you have this incredible encounter, yeah? So you have the Buddha trying to help his friends understand what's happened to him and understand that he's free, yeah? And Buddhism is very systematic, yeah, it's method. There's a lot of method. In a way, most of Buddhism is method. But you can be sure that he wasn't teaching, if you want to call it teaching, or communicating in that way. It would have been a direct experience, yeah? Being with somebody who themselves is free, spending time with them. If you're receptive as well, it's a very different thing, yeah? So it's more to do with friendship, you might say, and contact and intimacy and, yeah. But at a certain point, one of his old friends gets it, yeah? So they've probably been together for days, maybe even weeks, and at a certain point, one of his friends, Kundanya, gets it. And this is like a huge moment in Buddhism, probably in the history of the world. It's astonishing, really, isn't it? But this one person gets it, and the Buddha is overjoyed. He says, Kundanya knows. Kundanya knows. So there's now two people that are free, yeah, essentially. So this is a momentous moment, yeah? And he works with the rest of them, other people, and we can be incredibly urbane and cynical, and you know, this is our life, we're on our phones, and it's quite difficult to bring ourselves into this kind of atmosphere because we're quite fizzy and we have our own things going on. But these people, like the kind of depth of awareness that's possible to achieve, that's why I became interested in Buddhism in the first place. You know, you kind of come to meditation, do a bit more, and you realize, oh, there's kind of levels to this. Yeah, there's your day-to-day mind, and there's an expanded mind, which other things can happen in. So, more of these people, they free themselves, yeah, and they start talking to other people, and so on and so on, and eventually the Buddha sends them out once there's a substantial number and says, you know, go and talk to other people. So this is really basically what I wanted to talk about. The founding of Buddhism is essentially based on friendship, what we call Kalyana Mitrata. Kalyana means something like beautiful, auspicious, spiritual, and Mitrata means something like friend, Mitra, friend, yeah? So you're not coming with a whole it's organic, put it that way. You know, you have kind of links of friendship, you have chains of friendship. And this is how basically Buddhism has spread, yeah? And it's hard to understand it sometimes. And the reason I got quite interested in this as well is because, for example, coming to a place like this, it's possible for people to relate to something like this as an institution, yeah? In a way, it is an institution. We're organized, yeah? We're fairly well organized, and we could be even more organized, which would be great. It's always helpful. But there's bricks in the wall, there's tea being made, there's people doing all kind of things, volunteering, and it can be easy, especially if you've been in a university environment or work environment, whatever, to come into a place like this and think, oh, it's an institution, and relate to it as an institution. You know, this isn't right, or it needs to be like that, or yeah, or it can be very passive, yeah. But basically, what you've got is friendships. Yeah, so that's essentially how this works. It's a network of friendships or interlinking friendships, yeah? And it's hard to see that, yeah? It might sound obvious to you, maybe it is to you, I don't know. But for me, it took me quite a long time to understand how this whole quote-unquote Sangha or community actually works, yeah? So I went on a retreat to this place called Padmaloka, yeah? It's where men get ordained. When I went there, I thought, oh, this must be like the Vatican of Triratna or something, you know, like this, there was all the head guys there telling everyone else what to do, and then the orders go out, and then there's little, not fax, or whatever. Anyway, there's a email here, and then everyone implements this stuff. That's kind of what I thought. There's this kind of rigid hierarchy, and the fact is, it doesn't work like that. And I was going for a walk with a guy called Padmavajra, who I used to see as like the abbot, yeah? I was like, oh, he's like the abbot of Padmaloka. And we were talking about something that needed to happen, yeah, or could happen, yeah? And he was talking about, the way he was talking, I suddenly realized, oh my God, this is all based on friendship. It's like, if this is like a kind of butterfly's wings, yeah? It's very, very delicate. It can produce a lot of incredible things, and you know, people can free themselves to different degrees, and they have a whole life, but it's basically on friendship, and it can't be on force. It doesn't. We don't get paid enough for it to be done on power, so you can't power your way through. You can't really manipulate people because that's against the rules in Buddhism. So it's just like, it's either friendship or it's nothing. I mean that quite literally. If it's not friendship in this, we have nothing here. Yeah. So in a way, that's how the Buddhism was started. Yeah, on that foundation of Kalyana Mitta, friend to friend. And then friend to friend, and friend to friend. To this point, quite literally, another thing that happened to me was when I was ordained, yeah, so you get, I don't know why you start here. Anyway, you get a white thing, the case it's called. I'd just done what I despised other order members doing when they seemed like, why are you talking in a stupid way about your caser? But anyway, you get ordained, you get given a caser, you get given a name, but it's basically the culmination of training, yeah? So some people are training for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 3 years, whatever. At a certain point, you get ordained, yeah? Good. So I got ordained. I won't go into the whole esoteric mystery of all that, but I stumbled out into Spanish Mountain nighttime sky, and I quite literally felt like I'd been hit by some kind of ghost train, yeah? And it was an awareness that, oh, this is a whole unbroken chain of friendships going back to the Buddha. It was a very strange experience and something that I hadn't clocked. Yeah? So that's how Buddhism gets transmitted. It gets transmitted through friendships. It doesn't get transmitted through books. It does, but not in a real way, not in a way that, unless you're very, very special. And there's not many people like that. There's a few that read something and bing, but even they will then meet other people that have been practicing, yeah. So it's all transmitted through friendships, yeah. And that's I just think it's really important to know that, yeah, especially in a place like this. Yeah. So this whole point of Kalyana Mitrata is the kind of key to this. Okay, so I'd like to just finish by talking about these two kinds of friendship. Two kinds of Sangha, yeah. So you have, which I'll get onto in a second, we have Sangha on this level, which is like a community, like we're going to eat afterwards. Great, community, Sangha, we have all sorts of retreats and courses and people meeting each other and a whole life together. That's one level. But to begin with, I'd just like to say something about this term Arya Sangha. Yeah. So again, Arya means noble. It's the Buddha's enlightened disciples, and I could never understand. I thought, we've got the Buddha. Why do we need all these other people in the picture? Yeah. So you have the Buddha, you have the Dharma, and then you have the Sangha. And I always used to think, for me, the Sangha was always a little bit underneath the other two, but they're actually, there's three of them, and they sit together. These three jewels, which is what these things represent. Yeah. These different jewels. So the interesting things about these kind of questions, yeah, it's a bit like the other two, a bit like enlightenment itself, a bit like the Dharma itself. The Sangha, there's no easy answers, yeah. You could riff off, you could say all kinds of things about it, but the things that came to my mind in recent days, Ron helped me, so in recent days, is it must be so important for people coming into Buddhism to know that the Buddha isn't the only one who attained enlightenment. So we don't deify the Buddha as a god. Yeah? He's not just like a normal bloke, and some people like to pull the Buddha down to some other level. But enlightenment is not a single occurrence. Yeah? It's kind of possible for all of us. That's the entire point of Buddhism. It's not it works against potential passivity, and it works against potentially alienating yourself from your ideal and saying, oh, there's the Buddha's up there, completely different from me. In a way, yes. But the Sangha, this kind of embodiment of a whole community of other people that have themselves also attained enlightenment, is a very strong reminder that it's not a single occurrence, and it's happened throughout history, and that's why we're practicing. Yeah? We're not here just to be nice people, drinking tea, hanging out. Yeah, that's the last. Why would we do that? Yeah, there's a whole. Well, anyway, but there's the whole point of the Sangha as a jewel is a constant reminder that it's you as well. Yeah, and you can also attain enlightenment. That spark, like Kundanya, we're not different. Yeah, so that's essential to have in the mix. Yeah. Also, and I think this relates more than ever to the state of our planet in a certain sense, Sangha kind of, you could say, represents the complete transformation of our collective existence. Yeah? We are obviously, I don't need to sound like this is a great new ideal, we're social animals. Yeah, of course, we all know that. We're social, collective creatures. Yeah? We operate in that way. We're not single units. The Sangha represents not just, so the Buddha is the individual. Yeah, the Buddha is an individual who, by their individual efforts, have freed themselves. Yeah, the Sangha, the community, the enlightened Sangha, is essentially this world transformed. Yeah, albeit in a very small way, it does radiate, and it's had a huge effect on the world. Yeah, right now Buddhism is very small compared to what it ever was, but it's been huge swathes of the planet have actually been influenced in that way, yeah. Generally for the better, yeah. And yeah, nothing changes. The Buddha said 2,500 years this world is on fire, yeah. Not only in terms of warring parties, massacring each other and all kind of stuff. In that sense, the world is on fire. But he also said, in a way, the world is on fire. Our world is on fire. Our eyes, our hearing. Our whole being is kind of tormented in a certain sense, and unless you deal with your own mind very, very firmly and get on top of it, nothing changes, I'm afraid, isn't it? You know, we can all get very angry. I was into communism when I was younger. I thought, yeah, communism, we need an armed revolution and the proletariat and all this stuff, you know, dictatorship of the proletariat, unbelievable. Anyway, I thought this was a viable option. Then you look into how this manifests, everyone with their good intentions, like all of us. I guarantee if someone gave you ultimate power in the world, this world would be a complete catastrophe. Yeah? We think we're going to change the world, we know what to do. As soon as you get all that power and you get all that resources of violence, it's done deal. You're going to destroy this planet, I'm afraid. So in a way, unless you transform your consciousness, that's the Buddha's whole point. You have to transform your consciousness before you can even think about you being the supreme leader that's going to tell everyone how it should be. You probably need to do some work. So, not that it's going to happen, but you get the point, yeah? And maybe the third point Arya Sangha is in a sense a very, very strong resource of guidance and inspiration from all these different women, different men that we can look to with very different lives. Yeah, not just a Buddha story, all kind of story. Like last week, we had a serial killer. Yeah, there's Kisa Gotami who lost her baby and was in a complete state of distress. There's all these incredible disciples of the Buddha that we can gain inspiration from, and they relate to our own, where we're coming from, our own particular life and the way we see things, yeah? So maybe that's enough to say about the Arya Sangha. So just to make the point, that's why it's one of the three jewels, yeah? It's our own potential, yeah? You have the Buddha, but you also have your potential, yeah? Your potential. Our collective life, yeah? Our collective life can actually be very different. And frankly, that's why I've stayed along all these years, because even though I thought, I want to live a more cool life, I want to go, and I've tried all kind of stuff, actually I just missed these people. I just thought, wow, how often do you come amongst people that actually look at you in that way, en masse, yeah, with care, love, awareness. They really have your best intentions at heart, yeah, even though it's a mess sometimes, we're stupid or whatever and weird, yeah. Actually, it's very, very rare. So on that level, even on this level, you can experience a taste of that, I think, of one's collective life transformed, yeah? Simple things like, for example, I was talking to someone the other day, but if you're in an office, it's kind of all right. You gossip about people, it's like, yeah, do you see, and then someone else gets involved, and before you know it, this person is out, and everyone's like, yeah? In a Sangha, it's kind of like looked down on, yeah? That's quite a big difference. It sounds like nothing, but for example, not being into that, it's a very different experience. Okay. I just want to finish then by very briefly talking about Sangha on this level. I'm kind of talking about it anyway, yeah? So, why is it important? It's important on this level because the teachings live in people. Yeah, they do live in books, but they live in people. Yeah, so you learn from each other. You see how people make mistakes. You see how you make mistakes. You see how you're inspired. Other people are inspired. You don't understand what the Buddha's saying, do you? No, neither do I. And so you talk to other people, and you kind of get there somewhere, and you're like, wow, okay, a doorway opens, and it opens in communication with other people. You get inspired by other people's lives. I've got loads of people that I'm inspired by, yeah? Loads of people that, well, I was going to say, like, I was going to think, talking about gossip, I was interested, like, articulating somebody that I sometimes feel ashamed around, like, because I'll be talking about someone, not wanting to talk about someone, thinking, I'm such a worm, like, I shouldn't do this, like, I'm so low, I should really cap this, but it's like got delicious quality of like, you're like, yeah, and you think it's, and he's like, you're not saying anything, so it's really helpful to be around people that are just going to they're going to shame you just by not getting involved with your nonsense, yeah, so there's that level, which is really amazing. That's a teaching in itself, and I've actually made a pledge and made a vow not to gossip about people, and Amy said she'll tell me off, so that's good. I'm not saying I should stop this because I'm not like a terrible gossip. I just wanted to. Okay, let's get over this bit. God. So also, yeah. So it's a working ground. Yeah, it's a working ground. In a Sangha, it's a very good opportunity to test things out, to test your own good side out, yeah? So the world is harsh, it can be brutal and a very unforgiving place. So you need a little bit of a training. It's a bit like MMA or whatever people like, yoga or something, or, you try it, or sport or something. So, you're trying, you get yourself stronger, you've got more momentum, and then you go out into the world and someone's just like brutal towards you or rude. You have more of an opportunity to navigate creatively rather than just retaliating, So you have a working ground, you have a kind of training possible, yeah. So that's really, really helpful. An intensive working ground sometimes. It can be like a mirror. Yeah, the Sangha can be like a mirror. It's quite easy to kid yourself in the spiritual world, as we all know. I'm not going to pick out anyone in like some West Coast circles and like, just whatever, just flow. It's like great, but it's quite easy to get on a trip, yeah, thinking that you're kind of really flying spiritually, and then unfortunately you get a torpedo from a side angle. And you realize, oh, maybe I wasn't so spiritual the way I just responded, yeah? So it's quite good having a mirror. I'll be honest, it's not always pleasant, yeah? I've had periods where I'm like, I'm not sure if I'm feeling this community right now. Like, you know, the way people have given me feedback. I hate that word. I'm not feeling the feedback culture, but basically just mirroring yourself to yourself, yeah? Really important, because you can get big ideas about yourself, especially sitting here, you know, you can think, oh yeah, I'm somebody. And it's quite nice to have somebody just be like, yeah, you know, just to normalize you and not get any big ideas about yourself, yeah? So mirroring is very good. Intimacy is another point, yeah? One. Intimacy, yeah? So intimacy we normally just associate with sexual partners. That's intimate, isn't it? Anyway, I won't go to that. But intimacy and friendship as well. And it can be quite unusual. There's an unusual level of intimacy in a Sangha in terms of people falling in love with each other, yeah? Maybe not sexually, but yeah, like a real kind of living for each other, yeah? Those people that you live and die for, that kind of normally reserved only for your family and for your loved ones, but for your friends as well now, and other people as well. It has a radiation. That's incredible, yeah? So that's this. It's also a wellspring of positivity. Someone's always up when someone's down, yeah? That's one of the things I noticed quite a long time ago. If I'm good, I'm in a good mood, I can kind of help, you know, not give people advice, but just like you're there for somebody. And if you feel down, someone's there for you. There's always a wellspring of somebody's somewhere, yeah? It's a shared life, yeah. Especially in this day and age, we're so kind of alienated from each other. In many ways, it's tragedy. It's absolute tragedy, and it kind of destroys people's mental health. Yeah, I think we've all suffered from that at points. It's horrible. So, you know, one of the downsides of having such a kind of mobile culture and being able to move everywhere is you can lose your roots, you can lose your connections with people. And I'm not saying that I want to turn back the clock, but something like a community like this is essential, I think, for your own well-being. There's somewhere where you can kind of be with people. And finally, friendship in Buddhism, sometimes we talk about it like you need friends to progress along the path to attain the goal, which is enlightenment. Yeah, it can be talked about in quite utilitarian terms, like you need friends. Yeah, but actually, as the point has been made quite a few times, friendship, spiritual friendship, is the goal itself. Yeah, okay, the goal is enlightenment, but the goal is also friendship. And that gets brought out by later Buddhism, yeah? So you have this whole Mahayana tradition where the point is friendship, actually, at a deep level, not just like, how are you doing? Yeah, I'm all right, see you later. But friendship on a deep level is actually the point of all this, yeah? Yes, enlightenment, and the whole point is you can become a better friend. The less of you in the way, the less self-ish you are, the less self that's there, the better friend you can be, and the richer your life is. Yeah, so in a way, that's what Sangha is about. Yeah, so I hope that's some food for thought. Maybe it clarifies a little bit about why Buddhists are so, why they take Sangha, spiritual community, so seriously, and on those two different levels, yeah, as a source of inspiration and awareness of your own potential, but also as a life to live, more to the point, yeah, a rich life to live. And I think I'll leave it there. Thank you.